Good morning, everyone. Their description of me was a little on the polite side. That's not all of me. They didn't tell you, for example, that I'm a hopeless butterfingers. It's going to drop a few times by the time I'm done. They didn't tell you that I tend to mumble at the end of the sentences, like I did just now. I do all of that. I think one thing perhaps that needed to have been added is I'm a nerd. I'm a hopeless nerd. And one of the things I do is stuff like this. Find out if I have company, because I think this is the best time to be a nerd. I don't think this time in business environment has ever emerged before, where you can work with technology with the technical parts of technology slowly disappearing. That technology becomes something that you can work with seamlessly. And I'm not talking just about Gen AI and LLM. I'm talking about transformative technology that's underneath it. I'm talking about ML, and I'm talking about non-AI ML context also. But this is a lovely time to be a nerd. It's a lovely time to understand technology, work with technology, but it's not just about technology. It's also a great time to work with change management. You can't touch technology without working on CM, working on how people engage with change, how people work through change, how people struggle with change. And that's not just it. It's also a wonderful time to be in Marg. To be in Marg, where we have been here since 2017, working specifically in a very intentional fashion on what would make change work. And if there was ever a time to be in an event called Synapse, it's now. Between everything else that's happening in the world, this is the place to be in. So again, from my side, welcome. Welcome to this conversation. Welcome to Synapse 2026. I can't delay it any further. I don't need to tell you about the keynote itself. We started last year talking about AI. Research on AI, research on change management and AI, we did that. So the question is, where do we go from there? What's evolution from there? Yes, this session is all about AI-led digital transformation, but our attention was drawn by what do we think of when we work through a change? And I'm going to take you through two tools and a model. What are the two tools and model going to be about? Some of you have seen this, and if you haven't, the thought process here is very simple. This is what ProSci, a global leader in change management, it's been around for 3 decades now, calls a ProSci change triangle. It basically says, for a change to land, you need a leader. You need a leader who says this should happen and legitimizes the change. You need a project manager. You need a role of a project manager where the person says, this is how it should happen. These are the nuts and bolts. These are the options. This is what's going to work for you. You need a change manager who helps people lean into the change. You need these 3 roles working together for a change to land if they are connected at the hip with a joint definition of success right in the middle. That's what the change triangle, ProSci change triangle says is a model. It's a triangle, and as much as the vertices are important, the sides are equally important. What are the sides saying? The sides are saying that the leader needs to work with change management and deliver leadership actions. They need to make sure that the things are done in a way that the organization believes in this change being the right way forward, that this change is going to be sustained. Below, you have the leader and the PM and the CM team coming together to say we are one team, we are one execution team. Neither of us is a gatekeeper, neither of us is challenging each other, but together we are landing change. And on the left side, you have leadership decisions. And those decisions are what I'm interested in today. I'm interested in what kind of decisions do those leaders make? Yes, of course, it's about the project. It's about the scope and the resource and the technology around the project. But maybe there's more. Maybe there's more, and some of it leaders do make, some of it leaders don't make, and we don't know about that. But that's what the keynote is going to focus on. That's what the tools and the models are going to focus on. The first tool for us is going to focus just on what's happening with the leader. And again, the joy of being in Marg and joy of having been around for a couple of decades now is that we have worked with very many organizations. We have worked with very many leaders and contexts. And it has allowed us to ask this question. In general, what are we observing about how leaders think or behave during times of change in organizations based out of India? The model that we are using, the tool we are using is called Emergenetics. Again, an organization that's based on research, again, that's been around for 3 decades now. And Emergenetics is answering the question, what is it about our birth and our growth that together makes us choose to be who we are? Emergenetics is primarily focused on our preferences. Why is it mainly focused on preference? It's saying that, look, we are adults and we morph ourselves to any situation we are in. So I need to be quiet and listen. I can sit quietly and listen. If I need to step up and speak up, I can step up and speak up. We can all do that. The question over here is, what do we prefer doing, and why is that important? Because under pressure, it's those preferences that become a default mode. With that thought in mind, we worked our way through leaders who are working in organizations through changes, leading people through changes. A fairly large data set across different domains. And I'm going to take you through simultaneously 2 things. I'm going to take you through what is this profile saying and what does it say about leaders. The profile, speaking about behavioral preferences, things that a person might choose to engage with when they are working with other human beings, is number 1, expressiveness. Expressiveness is asking, in general, what of my mind's thoughts am I sharing with you? How comfortable am I speaking with you? So if I'm somewhere over here, according to this, I'm probably going to step into this room and go find a quiet corner and sit there and plan the day. If I'm on the right side, I'm going to be chatty. I'm going to be speaking to you, and as I speak to you, I'm going to make out where I stand. The leaders we're talking about, the answer that came back was, they are more likely in very many situations to speak up, to elaborate, to explain. Leaders under times of change. The second element, assertiveness. Expressiveness, how much of my mind's unfiltered thoughts am I sharing with you? With assertiveness, now I'm asking you, how do I share my beliefs, my thoughts, my opinions, my decisions with you? Again, if I'm on the left side, I tend to wait to hear what's your opinion. I share my opinion as one more, and then I'm curious, what about their opinion? What about his? What about hers? When I'm on the left side of that continuum, I tend to wait to hear what is our collective opinion. On the right side of the continuum, I have my opinion, and you shall hear it. Neither is right, neither is wrong. But this number you're seeing, incidentally, is a percentile. This represents those leaders under change in Indian organizations as compared to many, many leaders and adults. So if I'm putting them all in a row, then these leaders are in the 79th percentile. Definitely not going to be shy. And an interesting thing about that place in that continuum is the leader is going to enjoy confrontation. They're going to enjoy debate. They're going to enjoy discussion. They're going to enjoy pushing back. And the interesting thing is, that's not where it stops. The third element, flexibility, is asking, is it necessary that someone who's over here is going to want only their opinion to stand? Flexibility is asking, with all that said, how do people react to changes that are brought to them? And the data told us that these leaders who are vocal, who are descriptive, who are demanding, are just as likely to be demanding and descriptive about your ideas as their ideas. It doesn't make a difference whose ideas it is. They are flexible, they are open to opportunities as they arise. Think for a moment about the behavior profile that we're talking about. We're talking about a leader who steps into a room, is going to be clear about what they're thinking, is going to share it, is going to be demanding about getting things done as quickly as they can, as meaningfully quickly as they can, is going to be open to your ideas, but once they've heard your ideas, they're going to say, okay, fine, let's go. During times of change. This is behaviors. What about thinking? How do people process the world around them? How do these leaders process the world around them? Remember, we're taking an aggregate of multiple leaders and we're looking at an average. So we're treating all of those leaders as one brain. The interesting thing about this, twofold. A, those thinking attributes, as we call them, are 4 in number. I'm going to talk about them. And the interesting part is, you'd expect 4, it's a circle, you'd expect 25% being the cutoff. But no, it's 23%. If any of these slices are at 23% or more, then it's a preference. Otherwise, it's not a preference. What do I mean by preference? I mean, the leader can play in that with that attribute, but they don't normally choose to do so. This told us, number one, more than anything else, the leaders under change that we are describing choose to look for data that's logical. They look for data, they look for logic, they look for rationale, they look for why should I trust you, they look for why should I trust this data. The analytical preference is of the sort where leaders can sound skeptical, can also sometimes sound intimidating. But these are very clear leaders because notice the behavior preferences. The behavior preference said these are going to be leaders who are demanding. Not just that, these leaders, again, the data said, are leaders who would enjoy the whimsical, the differential, the things that are unusual. They would love for things that connect with the large picture. Remember, the behavior preferences told us that these are leaders who are flexible, third flexible, which means they enjoy reaching for new opportunities. What kind of new opportunities? New opportunities that are new, that are different, not necessarily what we did yesterday. Finally, these are leaders who do have a gut instinct for people. When they are in the room, they know where you're coming from. When they are in a hiring situation, they do know what you're thinking, or at least have a gut instinct for that. Where does that leave us? Look, if we connect up the dots, where does that leave us about leaders in these organizations bringing change into the game? 2, 3 parts. To start with, you have a leader who is explicit and demanding about what they need. You have a leader who's not necessarily going to stick to what we said yesterday or last week, because guess what? I have a new opportunity. You have a leader who's going to say, interesting, all this makes sense, but why not do this? What else can we do with this? More important, this leader is looking for data and facts, leading on the big picture, is relating to people. But there's a fourth element in this chart, which I didn't mention, which is this part. This turned out to be not a preference. This is talking about, does this leader enjoy working with the detail? We had a leader that we were having this conversation with, and the leader looked at me and said, Krish, I actually created the processes that we are working with today. When I came in, these processes were not there. And this leader's executive admin said, yes, but you're the person who always are the exception to the process. You never follow the process. So keep that nuance in mind. When someone has this attribute, they're able to figure out processes, but they don't necessarily stick with them. You are rolling out changes. You're engaging with them in times of change. How consistent are these leaders' inputs to you? How much of detail do you go into? How far down the 3rd month of deployment, 4th month of deployment are you thinking? What does sustainment mean for a leader who has this profile? Because on the flip side, there are some nuances over here. This leader is not necessarily the one who's going to wait and hear you out as you pull out the Gantt chart and say, milestone 1, milestone 2, milestone 3, milestone 4. When you ask, should we get nominations for the training? Should we bring managers in? They're going to say, yeah, these are details. Let's get this done some other time. There's another part to it, which is, it's not that this leader doesn't listen. Remember, preferences are not abilities. But this leader would like to make sure that their point has been heard and heard clearly, and that you have not misunderstood them. And now, for a moment, think about this not being a leader, but a C-suite in an organization. How well do you expect to be heard? There's a third element over here, which is, like I said before, with the third assertive, often debate. Let the best idea win is an understandable way of making decisions. So it's likely that you're going to be, as you pitch your change, as you pitch the way the change needs to land, you're going to have a fairly noisy conversation. Question, therefore, for all of us is, how do you work with this leader during change? Remember, this is us talking about the fact that we are now mature enough at Marg with the data that we have to speak about where do we see leaders during our change. We're able to see that organizations are, and we do challenge organizations on this, organizations seem to prefer leaders who are articulate and therefore presume that that nature of being articulate is connected with EQ, is connected with them bringing the organization along. And that may not always be a one-to-one relationship. Someone who has a firm grasp on business strategy and has got a very clear vision, you want to ask yourself, where did that vision come from, and how often does it come from people around them? We are in the AI world, and that's a weird phrase at very many levels. But it's worth keeping in mind that in many cases, you're going to have leaders making decisions on technologies that the organization has not understood, that that leader hasn't understood. But if there is a pace to that leader, and the leader's thought is, let's make decisions now, let's go, let's go, let's go, you're going to have the organizations making decisions that it's not ready to deal with. I've said all this about the organization, so perhaps we should go a little deep into organization itself. Let's talk culture. As a change manager, we often use culture as a bad boy. It's a miscellaneous category. Because of culture, something didn't work. There's a guy named Edgar Schein, and he's a culture expert. And he says culture is shared beliefs and systems. But what beliefs are we talking about? Human Synergistics is an organization that's been around for 5 decades now, and they work specifically in the field of culture. And again, Marg, we like everything that's research-based and data-based. And they have the circumplex, which is a good way to describe a culture. It's a circle. It's a circle much like a clock face. And when an organization's culture is captured, we get to see where they are, much like a radar map. It throws up clusters of behavior. On the left side, you have what we call as aggressive defensive styles. Aggressive defensive cluster. What happens here? Here, the organization believes that being absolutely right each time, making impossible targets and pushing yourself hard is the way we tick as an organization. The organization believes that the best way to make a decision is I push, you push, and only one of us win. It's a win-lose culture. The organization believes that the best way to make decisions is I'm in the position of authority, and authority drives that because authority brings responsibility with it. And the organization says, guess what? The best way to have discussions, decisions made is let the ideas meet. One cluster of styles. There's another cluster of styles which are, again, defensive, but they are passive. Here, it's don't raise your hands. Don't be the first person to put your hands up. Avoid responsibility. Second, make sure that you are never the only person owning something. Make sure that someone else is owning it with you. Third, make sure that you're not bringing the new stuff into the room. Do what you did yesterday. I heard GCCs mentioned, and keep that in mind. We sometimes, unfortunately, hire people into GCCs just so that they don't rock the boat, and then we ask innovation of them. Finally, you have organizations where the style essentially is be nice. Don't step on a toe. Don't make anyone feel bad. Finally, you have the constructive styles. And it's good for you to think Maslow's hierarchy. Think in terms of the bottom left, both the aggressive and the passive, feeding your security, your basic needs. Up there is self-actualization. Achievement. Set goals, meet them. Set stretch goals, meet them. Grow yourself, grow others. Self-actualizing. Humanistic, encouraging. We're not going to win unless we are a team. Affiliative. Constructively working with someone is respectful. Making them feel good is not good enough. And as you are hearing me, I'm hoping you all said, Krish, but we need a mix of all these, don't we? Don't we need a little bit of every one of these? You're not wrong. But interestingly, it's only the constructive styles that are pressure independent. The other two styles, when you're under pressure, when you're under attack, you are going to struggle. In that context, what have we seen about organizations under change? As a process, we go to them and ask them, okay, so what are you right now? Where are you right now? An answer that came back was this, saying, right now, we are driven by A, aggressive, B, passive. We are making things happen that we are asked to do. And when we make things happen, we claim credit for it. We make sure my job I do, your job you do. In the meanwhile, what is happening about these? Oh yeah, we will get to them. It's worth pausing and thinking about it. We have all been in changes, both as an employee and as a leader. And you know this, right? In your heart, you're saying, yes, Krish, mandates really work. KPIs really work. Telling them they must do it really works. And you're doing that with AI, aren't you? You have 17,000 XYZ licenses, and you're saying, well, now do it. Show me the use cases. Show me the magic. So here's the interesting pattern. You are saying that during change, it's more useful to hold people accountable, make sure they don't rock the boat, make sure they're sticking with the process, don't break anything, but make it happen. Doesn't that sound familiar? And if you're that leader, my question to you is, fine, after the change, how do you plan to go back up? Why do I care about that question? Because that's what they said. When we ask them, what's your ideal culture? What do you want to be? Oh, we want to be this. We definitely want to be this. All the good stuff. And here is the beauty. They want all the good stuff, but they still say, yeah, but Krish, in our industry, we still need the power. In our industry, we still need the accountability. We speak of culture as in very, very generic, abstract terms. But sometimes the most difficult conversation to initiate and see through is, what is your organization's culture right now? And for us, some of the things that we took away from it is, during change, organizations are taken up to a cleanup mode. Leaders go ahead and say, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, let me fix all of it. Yes, processes are a problem. I'm hoping XYZ platform is going to take that problem away. Yes, decision-making is a problem. I have a mixed demographic, and they do very, very many things, and I need to manage that. Forcing things through seems to be an easier way out. Second, remember, much of technology does this. It centralizes, it standardizes. I'm saying globalizes in opposition to localizing. Decision-making is taken away from local leaders, local teams. Decision-making is centralized now. And that has a consequence. That has a consequence, and that's the third bullet. If much of our changes are reinventing how a process works, how a task works, how a person's role works, how that person's role in the hierarchy works, what exactly do you think is happening to the people undergoing change? And what is happening to their thought process around either growing themselves or growing their colleagues? And again, my bigger problem over here is, whose problem is this? The change team has a particular mandate to get the change done and walk away. The leaders have a particular mandate, which is help the change team and make the change land. I'm not talking about CM or PM. Change needs to happen. Change is a priority. The orders come up top. So whose problem is it on what we leave behind? And Sudesh mentioned transformation leaders very often, and I really feel sorry for everyone who has a title which says transformation officer, chief transformation officer. Because the organization says, oh, welcome, you are going to transform us, right? All right. We are sitting back, entertain us. Nature of the beast. Which brings us to, what did we do with it? I said 2 tools and a model. We took all this information and said, let's see what happens when we put changes through such situations. What actually lands, what doesn't land. And our thought process over here was, at least come up with a diagnostic, something that tells us what could results look like. The intention of us we are geeks at Marg, and we like math, so we went down this path. The few things you want to keep in mind anytime you touch a model is this part, more than anything else. It's only as good as the assumptions we make. And we threw everything, including the kitchen sink, at the model. Throwing all of that at the model gave us an idea of when it breaks. It turns out size is not the problem. It turns out the nature of the change is not a problem. Even layoffs work. Yeah, the big bad layoffs. The organization does show resilience past that. Even poorly managed change, initially poorly managed change, gets better along the way. Those were not the problems. When we work through it, we put in things like locations, like clusters. We put in questions of what happens when some senior managers are in, some are not. What happens when leaders say yes, but they don't do yes? So we put in everything we know. And for us, what was instructive was this as well as that. We need to know what works and what doesn't work. I'm not going to take you through every tiny bit of what we figured out. But a few things are worth identifying, worth calling out. Number one, it is not necessary that the C-suite alone lands the change. Your N-1 and N-2 are vital. I don't know about you, but we take N-1 and N-2 very literally and very tactically. And it turns out that they are your key link, not your C-suite, surprisingly. Your organization, your employees are smart enough to know that, okay, the senior-most CXOs, they have a lot of things to do. They're going to say yes to many things, but that's not where the game is. Just before them is where business decisions get taken, operational decisions taken. I want to know what they're thinking. Second, big bang changes do work. Think of a fire. Think of wildfires. Think of wildfires starting in many places. And I'm not talking POCs. I'm not talking pilots. If you were here last time, you know what I think about them, right? That's not the point over here. The point is you need to start these changes in as many places as possible. Third, you're not done till you're done. And in the nicest way possible, hypercare is not done. You're done when that person's way of work has changed significantly and is going to stay changed. Significantly means that they are seeing their results get better. Four, it is at sustainment that the change truly becomes theirs, meaning hypercare again, post-go live. Until then, you're saying, this is it. Now test it a few times. Try this now. This is my UAT. This is my training. You show them pieces of it. It's only post-go live that you gave them the whole 9 yards, and they say, oh, this is what you were doing. And that's when they truly kick the tires. Flip side, this is hard, especially now, connect back to the kind of leader we are having, that we are seeing nowadays. Leaders that tell. And employees now are used to the fact that we will be told. So if a leader does not tell, the employee says, well, apparently this person is not serious enough. Let me wait to see if this is serious. So it's a lovely vicious circle. The employees want to be told, and they will do as told. And that can be good or bad. Second part, the moment you see a silo, a senior leader failing, mentally be prepared that all the way down that chain of command, you're going to have fallouts. We don't do anticipatory change management well enough. We don't do anticipatory consequence management well enough. We wait for things to happen. We are incredibly reactive. Why? Because there are many changes happening, Krish. I don't have time for each change. But bottom line, the cascades are visible. Third, this is what the models came up with, and it was scary to watch. It's almost like a thread fraying. A perfectly fine organization, by the time we're done with this change, the threads are frayed, the social linkages have dropped, and then we throw in a second change with that, and the second change fails, or the third change fails. So sometimes, just like tech debt, you're having a change debt too, and the next change is paying the price of your hastily done change. Last, like it or not, it's not one organization culture. It's not one location culture, it's not one functional culture. Each leader is forming their own subculture, and if we are not watching for that, your change will struggle, and it will feel like moving through jelly as your change passes, traverses the whole organization. Where does this leave us? We said 2 tools in a model. We said leaders and decision making. The few things that we'd like you to take away. we are in a situation, we are in an environment where it looks like leaders that tell are very often holding the mic, in which case they're not persuading. They're telling. No matter how much the conviction, if someone is told something, there are some barriers that sit up. Second, think of culture. I understand the fact that most change teams do not have the mandate to mess with culture, and perhaps we shouldn't, I agree. But think of a change as a painting on a wall, which is the culture. If your wall is messy, your change is eventually going to fail. I'm not saying fix the wall, but I am saying don't just wallpaper it and say job done. And organizations are doing this. Consider that. What we get out of the models? Variables are important. Choose the variables. Do your change intentionally. We now have data. We have working models that tell you this is what you can work with. These are your leverage points. But as we finished doing it, we said, okay, how many organizations are willing to spend the time to do this? And the unfortunate, sad result was most organizations are going to say to the consultant, can you figure it out and tell us what combination will be best? Don't make us think. That's sad. That's empowering in a different context, but that's sad. Thinking should not be outsourced. Responsibility should not be outsourced, and that does happen. Speed substitutes for strategy. These were things that we thought we should share with you. This is happening as we see it. Again, we are really grateful that we have access to data of this kind. We are able to see organizations through an X-ray in this form and shape. That's really, really lucky for us. I'm pausing this storyline here. By now, some of you are going to say, Krish, I mean, this was good stuff, nice stuff, but I was looking for something more entertaining. I wanted stories. I wanted something that is a little easier to digest. I mean, I drove a long way, and I need more than a cup of tea to figure this out. To you, I'm saying that there is more that comes.
I think everyone enjoys a nice murder, provided he is not the victim.
And our version from a change management perspective is, I think everyone enjoys change stories and case studies so long as you're not the case. Right? And I'm hoping that much of our change conversations today are going to be just that. Thank you so much for listening to me.